Perfect. Hey everyone, welcome to a new guest speaker session at the Execution Lab. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with a real founder and hear the real story behind their business. We believe that the best way to learn is by doing it yourself, and the second best is through someone else's experience. Today's guest is Jeffrey Denissen, a fractional CFO who spent 20 plus years inside the corporate financial world and then decided to build something of his own. If you've ever thought about turning your expertise into a business, pay attention to this one. Jeffrey, glad to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Let me share my screen. I have a little presentation prepared. I hope you can see. Oh, can we see this?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you for the announcement of this session. From accountant to CFO was the title. And also, what does it take to bring your corporate experience into a business, and what do you need to make that happen? So let me first introduce myself a little bit more. So I'm a CPA. I got my original designation from the Netherlands. I moved to Canada, turned my Dutch designation into a Canadian one, and started working here in Canada in 2013 after having worked multiple years in the Netherlands. And I've always been interested in processes. That's why I went into accounting. That's why I did my CPA designation, because I was interested in the crossroads of finance, numbers, and processes, and how does it work together. So that is where my original why comes from, having that interest and moving that forward. And looking at the finance roles that I always had, it ranges from accountant, auditor, CFO, bookkeeper. And what I see currently in the smaller business world, it's not always clear what those people do. There is some blending of those roles, but if you talk about CFO and what I'm currently doing, that is everything to do with strategic financial leadership, long-term financial planning, and in-depth financial expertise, bringing that to the table so that you can move a business forward. Not like an accountant looking back, not like a bookkeeper that you work in the details. I'm really high level. And why did I do that? Because I saw this a lot. Why most businesses fail is they don't have cash, or they have their processes not in order. And if you look at the statistics, 20% fail within the first year, 35% within the second year, 50% within the fifth year, and that's huge. So think about it. If we're 10 people in this room now, 50% of us will not have the same business that they started this year in the next 5 years. That's huge. So that is why I thought, okay, that needs to be different. And during my corporate experience, I saw that left and right happening. And often I thought, if they would only apply those corporate principles that the big successful firms do, then they would be so much more different. They would be successful, they would move their things forward. And if you look at what is needed to be successful, only 6 pillars. And every merger and acquisition firm will tell you this. Every bank will tell you this. It's cash flow discipline, it's revenue and quality of the revenue, the cost structure and your margin stability, it needs to be there. Then the people, that's a huge one. Structure, accountability. If I've seen those departments within the big corporates where nobody was accountable. That never lasts long. And if you have that within small firms, and every now and then I see that, that's recipe for disaster. And then managing the business instead of working in the business. What I often see, and especially if you start your business, you work in the business. You are the one doing everything. But the trick is to get out of it, managing the business. And I will tell you later on how I did that. And then financial clarity and trust. It's basically the bottom line of every company. If you don't have that, and you're constantly awake at night on what are the finances, who's going to pay me, what is my cash flow, That's a recipe for disaster. So basically what I do is start working with my clients on 4 steps. And after this, I will go into my journey. So 4 steps.
Apologize, Jeffrey. The Google Meet window is overlapping your presentation, so maybe you can move it a little bit.
Oh, which one do you see?
That one, that little screen there.
Do you see
There you
this?
go. Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you for mentioning. This is an easy one, and everybody gets that. Generate more cash than you spend. Not so easy if you look at a lot of companies. Within ING Bank, where I worked for a long time as in several roles, there was the standard joke that starting companies, as soon as they would do well, they would buy that Porsche, or they would lease it, or they buy it in year 3. And then in year 5, they would be bankrupt because everything looked very nice. Money was flowing in, but they didn't think about the tax. They didn't think about all the obligations they had. And in year 5, that would come to an end. Everything would come together. So this is also something to take into account on the long term. Generate more cash than you spend. The second one is create targets for profit and cash flow. What you often see is that people come up with a budget for their expenses, but not for revenue, not for cash flow. So then you run into problems because your spending could be okay if the revenue and at the end of the day, your margins are not really well managed, your cash flow is under pressure, and that becomes the issue. So you should have the full picture. And that's what I try to tell all my clients. The third item is keep score. As soon as you start to do that, you learn what is going well and what is not going well. And the fourth one is create an action plan for everything we just discussed, for creating more cash flow, for the procedures, for your targets on revenue, for the targets on how much dividend want I pay myself, how much I want to pay to my employees to make sure they stay. It all comes together in those 6 bullets that I mentioned earlier. So how did I get here from a corporate role into now working for myself? The first misconception I want to speak about is that people in corporate roles think, now I need a certification. Now I need to know way more. I need to start studying. I need to do all kinds of things to advance myself. I think that's a misconception. You have the skills. It's really a shift in strategic delivery. What do you do? How do you add value? And think about those items. I think most corporate people have the skill set to do whatever they like to do. You have to stay close to your core skills, but if you do that, you're fine. There's no need for extra master classes or certifications. And you often see it when people start looking around for starting their own business. They get bombarded with, oh, you should come study with us. You should do an MBA. You should do this. I would say it's not really necessary. It's really the mindset to grow, to skill, and have the ability to show your customers that you're able to do what you promised to do. So what I also see is that businesses drift. There's not always a big problem. Most of the time, there's not a big problem, but things shift over time. And that also goes for my firm. You have some expectations, you move things forward, and then things change. So, for example, I started my firm as an accounting firm. I promised to do bookkeeping, I promised to do tax, and I promised to do CFO work. And over time, I noticed that's no fun, the bookkeeping. Tax is no fun. There's a lot of studying involved. Why don't I go back to my core skills? That is really advisory, long-term, looking forward, looking at the crossroad of finances and procedures, and help my clients like that. So that's how my company shifted into more CFO only, and also into, okay, what kind of activities can I do, and what kind of outcomes do I promise my clients? So keep it as simple as possible is also what I would tell everybody who starts their business. Corporate people have the ability to make very simple things very complex. Doesn't work. It should be the other way around. And that's what I do for my clients as well. Make very complex things very simple so you can repeat it, that it's predictable, and that you can provide clarity. This is what we do. This is how it aligns with the strategy. This is how it aligns with the goals. Another thing that I often see when working with clients, and that made the shift for myself, is that bookkeeping is seen as a necessary evil. And it often is. And there's a lot of limitations in bookkeeping and accounting, and it doesn't help you to move forward. Even myself, I look at my clients, I help them to look forward, but making that shift is not easy. You really have to do a good analysis, a good review of what's going on, and make that shift into, okay, that means the following. Going forward, this is going to happen based on this, this, and this. Make that really clear to yourself if you're looking at working on your own business, and use it also for decisions. What you often see with small businesses is that decisions are taken based on a feeling, based on what the competition is doing, based on a market research that somebody sent to you, or a tip that somebody gave you, and not so much as based on data. What I would say, and that's why I say, write down everything you do, document everything you do, collect the reports that you have available and analyze them on a periodic basis. Really sit down every few weeks and go through it so that you can start making decisions based on data, real data, and that you can see the pattern going forward. I know that's a lot of work and it sounds really boring, but if you want to have better decisions, that is really, especially for starting companies, the way to do it. So in my journey, I also help other CFOs to move forward, get to market, change from a corporate role into having their own company. And what I often see, people get stuck in doing those things that they feel are right, but they're not per se aligning with what is good for the firm. How do you really drive your results forward? So that's where writing down things comes into play. So networking, a good example. People can network all day. You can go to all kinds of events. You can spend your whole day on it if you're really good at it and you really like it. But does it bring results? That's the question. Then you would say, and you would see that not every networking event is the right one for you. So if you write it down and learn from that, that's a good example where you collect the data, make a decision, and then all of a sudden you see that you always go to the chamber event, nothing comes from it. So why are you doing it? How does it add value to your company? It doesn't. So that's another example. What corporate people do also is reporting. They're very good at drafting reports. And then the shift, if you start your own company, is shifted into leadership. Really, what do you do with those reports? A lot of corporate people, in my experience, have experience with how to report it, have the discussion on theories, but not the practical experience. Okay, let's do the following with this report. Let's move things forward. And that is really one of those three key transitions that you need to make, from making data support decisions, really looking forward to, okay, I have the data, now what? Really step up on that leadership role and move it forward. And three, also take care of what's happening. Be accountable. And I would say most business owners really are excelling in that part. And that comes also with a downside. So you can make it very complex, but clarifying the complexity, making things very simple by going back to the data, hover on it from a 10,000 feet level, and then make a change. That is really what's helping to drive a business forward. And basically, that's also what a fractional CFO role should do for a company going forward. The decision to make the transition. Any questions so far? I know I talk quite fast, but are we okay?
So just a clarifying question
Yep.
to me. Would you say a CFO is kind of a CEO, but maybe with a more, how can I say this? Like with an approach more in the numbers, in like the financials, but at the end of the day, you are someone that helps the business make decisions, right?
That's it. To clarify the decisions based on data. So you have all kind of consultants that help with leadership, that help with marketing. I would say my focus is the numbers and making the connections with other departments like marketing, like operations, and see how are we on track with this? From a financial perspective, I see the following. What do you see from a marketing perspective or an operations perspective? Is that aligning? So that's where the teamwork starts.
Even as you said, going to networking events.
Yeah.
What's the ROI of you going to all these networking events, right?
Yeah, and on a bigger level, you could say you're spending so much money on marketing. What does it bring us? And your people are not going out there. I've seen those examples where people don't go out there. So I ask, how many meetings did they have? And then if the answer is one a day, and we're spending 50K a month on that, that's not okay. Then we have to shift strategy based on the numbers. And that's supporting then the marketing manager from, okay, we're not on the right path. Let's hire somebody else or do something different and make people accountable. So what are you going to do to have those, to make sure we're paying you good money? How are you going to pay us back in value for the company? You don't say it that blunt, but
yeah,
you get.
Well, sometimes you should, right?
Sometimes you should, not always. That's exactly true.
Thanks.
So yeah, that's how the numbers really drive things forward. By making that translation, giving it to the right people that make the decisions in those fields, and be really a team player on, how does this work? And does it add value? Not from a financial perspective. You see that a lot with non-for-profits. They love to do what they want to do. They're very community driven, and that's all good. But if the numbers don't support that, it's not sustainable, right? It's with those non-profits that say we shouldn't make a profit because we're a non-for-profit. That's not true. You have to have a surplus, right? We call it difference, surplus, instead of profit, to make it sustainable and to be able to do this next year as well, to move it forward. And that's the different thinking of a CFO from, yes, we are a non-for-profit and we have an awesome goal to support the community, but it should be sustainable. And then it's the role of the CFO to make that clear from, we're not getting enough grants, we're not getting enough money in, we have plenty of expenses. Some of those expenses don't answer the objective of the firm, of the non-for-profit. So what do we do about it? Are we going to continue that? Or are we going to skip that? Let's make a team decision on what to do with this.
Nice. I have more questions, but maybe they are for when you finish your presentation.
Yeah, I have one more slide. So it's all about, if my experience when setting up my firm, scaling things, the real challenge is balancing your time, right? You do everything yourself. I think you all recognize that as well. You do everything yourself, but then the moment comes, who do I hire? How do I make sure I do that? And that is the learning curve that I had to have. If you hire people, you have to master that topic yourself and take the time to explain it to that person. If you don't do that, it will sidetrack, it will be a distraction, it will be a huge headache. And I've been there. So really making sure you're working with the right people, but also be ready for that. So everything should be SOP. Everything you outsource, you have to know exactly what do I get out of that for this amount of money that I'm spending on this person. And I would say that is one of the big challenges of your own company, that scaling perspective, getting the right money and the right activities out of people. But it's a fun one. If you see it moving, the SOPs all of a sudden start to work, everything becomes a system and it's not a job anymore. And you can step away and you know the people are taking the right decisions based on your instructions. That's an awesome moment. Core competencies that I would say you have to have your own company. It's really judgment based on numbers, but also see what's working, what's not working. Communication with people. Often you see that corporate people start a business because then they don't have to work with other people more anymore, right? They can do it all alone. That's not working. It's all about working with other people you like, making connections. I would say it's even more important than in the corporate world, making those connections with other people, do things together, be very clear on your communication. What do you want to do and how do you want to move it forward? And finding the right people that have exactly the same thing in mind as you. That's the whole trick, and that's the beauty of it. And I enjoy that part every day, to move that forward and work with people I really like and do great things together. And also your business. Often you see that people take a training and then they take the input from that, and my experience is that is nice, but it's your firm. You can make it the way you want it, how it works for you. So I would say that's another beautiful thing of having your own company. You can create everything. It has to work for you, not for somebody else. And then basically that's my takeaway. So any questions? I want to open up the floor for questions, if you have any.
That's great. Thank you very
Yeah.
much, Jeffrey, for your presentation. So let's start with the questions. I'll start. I have so many, but please, guys, go ahead as well. So one of my questions is, so how do you charge your clients? Because in maybe the consulting world or the fractional world, we are used to time and materials and kind of the basic things. But then packaging and being different from other competitors, that's usually a challenge. So maybe how you package your products, and how you came up with whatever package you have right now.
Yeah, I do two packages. So fractional is really hourly rates. And I base that on my expertise. I look at competition and I look at what do I want to make with those hours. It's really that part from, okay, what should I cost if I look at what I'm worth? What should I earn elsewhere? What kind of profit do I want to make? What kind of overhead do I have? And it's basically the same I do for my clients. What kind of margins do I have to charge to make it work for me? And that's how I come up with my hourly rate. Then I do packages. And that's a little bit more tricky because I give a fixed rate, and that's based on a number of things. The size of the company, the hours that I have to make to service that client properly, and also what is the added value for this, right, for the service. It's the same with software. What is the added value that you can charge your client? And that's where you have to be careful, because my promise to my clients is always, I make my money back, and otherwise we shouldn't be working together. So that is for me then also what is possible in this company, what is a reasonable rate. And most of the time it's just based on the hours you make, but also partly on what can we do together and how can we create real value to you. So it's a little bit of everything. It's not one size fits all. It also depends on how complex is this organization, what is the risk of not doing things going forward. If it's really straightforward, probably I will charge your hours. If it's really complex and there's a lot of investigation necessary and a lot of discussions with staff, that's a different price tag. And that's different added value at the end of the day. So not a specific answer, but I hope I answered
Yeah.
that question. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Any questions from the audience? Yeah, Aaron, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yes. So how did you did how did you figure out your price point?
Well, it's based on the objective of your firm. So if you want to calculate your price point, the question should be, what do I want to make this year? What are my overhead expenses? What is the profit that I need to make this company sustainable? And basically, I calculated back from how many hours do I put in? And that's determining a little bit, I would say 90% of the price. But then it's also, is this market rate? You have to do some research on that. And is it answering all my objectives? That's basically the rate. What kind of expertise do you bring in? What would I earn elsewhere if it was a corporate job? All those factors have to be included. That's how I would really benchmark it. But it's not a clear answer. I know that, but it's basically, what do you want to get out of it? That's where it starts, together with benchmarking. How much can I charge? Because yeah, you have that TikTok event where the guy says, well, I need $1 million a year. Yeah, that's not going to happen. It's not market rate, right? So it's a little bit of everything from that perspective. Also look at the competition, and then also look really well at what kind of expertise do they bring and what do I bring, and where am I different, and where am I way faster than the competition. Also that.
So, tricky question. You said that you compare. I mean, to determine what you want to make, you also consider what you would make in the corporate world.
Yep.
From that number, you go up or down?
Up, because you're taking a risk by having a company, right? And that needs to be compensated too. So I always call that the risk margin that you have to put on top of that, because you have a business, you have expenses to pay, you have all kind of other things that you are responsible for, nobody else, and that should be compensated too. So no, I wouldn't go down. I would go up to make sure that you cover those risks, and that is covered within the hours that you are planning to make in the remainder of the year. Yep, for sure.
Yeah. And you also have to consider the cost of client acquisition as well.
Yeah, that is wasted time if you think about it, but it's not wasted. It needs to be calculated in that effort too. Those are hours that you make as well.
Yeah.
Which need to be covered by those hours that you can invoice.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Any other question, guys?
Good questions.
Well,
yes.
You can also write it on the chat, or just, unmute yourself and ask. Don't be shy. One question, Jeffrey, how do you find your clients? And, well, maybe before that, who's your client? Who's your ICP? And how did you come up with that? How did you understand who your ICP actually is?
Yeah, it's a little bit trial and error in the beginning. And all of a sudden you find a sweet spot for yourself. So for myself, that is all businesses with a revenue of more than $1 million and a couple of employees. And the most important requirement is they want to move forward, but they hit a glass ceiling. They can't get a loan with the bank. The cash flow is not working. Their growth, all of a sudden there's a glass ceiling and they don't understand what's happening. So business owners with that kind of problems are my ideal client, because that is the sweet spot for me to analyze the numbers and work with that. If there's no pipeline with sales, I'm not able to help them. I need to have data. At the end of the day, I want to move them forward. So often, to answer your question, where do my clients come from? Often from banks that want to give the loan and the clients are not there yet, or people in similar fields, wealth managers that see, okay, this client doesn't do the contribution this year because things are tough. How can we change it? Then I come into the picture and I can make that difference with their cash flow by tweaking things, reconsidering things, and helping them out. So most of my work comes from referrals, marketing people as well, where they see, okay, the pipeline is full now, but now we get all kind of cash flow issues because they're making the wrong decisions. So a lot of people refer CFOs from that perspective as well, because then I can help them out to analyze those numbers, make it work, and then often we also bring in COOs to make the operations more efficient. So it's really that teamwork again, right? So that's where, yeah, it's a referral because nobody is looking for a CFO on YouTube or whatever. It's all referral work.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess a follow-up question there is, if you get your clients from referrals like banks and well, other people that you mentioned, what are your sales initiatives? Like, how do you spend your sales time in the company getting like building this referrals network, or like how do you intentionally get a new client?
By keeping your network up to date, by offering presentations to my network, do things for them, invite them for other events, like you just did with me. I have events too where I will invite you, and that's how the ball keeps rolling. So then the more people can see what we are doing, the more people will be interested and ask the follow-up question. And that's where things come from. And that's what's making it really interesting, the assessments. So I offer free assessments. That's the other thing I offer. If people have a problem, I want to see it. I want to see how difficult the company is, how complicated things are. And that's where I can offer my value and say, hey, I can fix this for you or not. That happens too, where people show me something and then I had that case last year. They were so far in depth where I said, well, I can't help you here. Sorry. This is too much. Even I can't do it. Even if you're 100% or 200% committed, this is not going to work. So that is my warning always to people. If you see that coming, talk to people. Ask for a second opinion. Get an expert involved. Yep.
All right. Questions, guys? I can. Oh, yeah. Dilara asked on the chat, what are some successful channels to find new clients? I guess you already answered that, but maybe you want to unpack anything else?
Yeah. If you're just starting out as a company, I would go for the chambers. Always good. B&I, always good. You learn a lot from that. I would start with those kind of things, and then eventually you will see what you like and move on, and you will find other subgroups where you can join and participate. All of a sudden you will find your niche, is what I would say, by going to those generic things at first. And I think it's part of the necessary journey to visit those kind of things, see what's out there, see what kind of chambers you like, what kind of people you like, who do you like working with. I think those are the events to check that out.
And yeah, Dilara says, thanks, Jeffrey, totally agreed. So in your presentation, you mentioned that one of the reasons why companies fail is that we work in the business, not on the business. And I can't agree more on that. So how did you achieve that? Because I guess being a CFO, you really need to spend your time, your hours with clients. So yeah, curious, like how did you achieve that?
By thinking about the end state early. What you often see that when a business is a job is that they don't think of, they're happy with their income. They don't want to make any changes. And then you will never scale, and your company, you will never be able to sell it because there's no value. Because value comes from systems that are in place, staff that knows exactly what to do when. And that all starts with writing those standard procedures. How do you want your firm to look like? What is the ultimate goal? Think about those kind of things. So how I did it, all of a sudden you see, this is what it takes to bring in a client. This is what it takes to do the monthly review and advisory service. This is what it takes to offboard a client. Write it down, make it standard procedures, use the AI and tools that are available for that. And all of a sudden you have a machine working for you. CRM is a good example. Yes, you can do Excel, but if you really think about, this is my firm, this is my reputation, this is how I want to communicate with clients, you can pre-program that or have that pre-programmed in your CRM. Have defined all the classes of clients, referral partners, and all that. And all of a sudden, it starts working for you because then you have to click, just give that one client a label, and all of a sudden the whole email flow goes. That's one example, and that goes also for the other parts of your firm, the bookkeeping, the operations department, your client acquisition. It all should be systemized, and that's what I try to do. And I can still improve. I think everybody can improve on that when you really sit down. But that's part of the game. Keep your company going and improve things with small steps. And don't stop working on your clients or your client acquisition because you will need a new website. You have to make the right priorities, focus on what really drives your business and all those other things. It doesn't need to be perfect. I think that's the biggest lesson. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just make it move forward. That's it.
Better done than perfect there, right?
I like that saying, and that's so true. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for a business like yours, is it, or I guess, well, yeah, is it possible for you to ever not really work in the business anymore, like fully delegate it? And if so, how would you do that?
Yeah, it's absolutely possible because I'm part of a roundtable of other CFOs, and there are CFOs doing exactly that. I'm not there yet in the journey. They started a little bit earlier, but it's like I said, it's educating the people really well on the procedures, what you need to have out of them. Making sure you reward them accordingly, that they see the same objectives that you have in your firm, like keeping your clients on board for a long time, making sure they see that importance as well, and make sure that they get rewarded when that happens. Having everything in a standard procedure, but also making sure that you have a successor. That's the biggest thing that I often see, that people don't think about the successor. So have somebody on board, think about it early, and educate them on the parts where you think, okay, that will contribute to eventually be able to take this over from me. And that's what those other CFOs have done. What I see is very successful. Just hire the right people that want to be a partner eventually in your company, and educate them on how to approach things and improve things. It's trust.
That's a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
I actually haven't thought about it in kind of in that way. That's a very interesting perspective.
It starts with, where does value come from your company come from, right? What kind of business would you buy if you had to buy it today? Well, then you think about, okay, I need great staff. I need to be clear on the margins and the cash flow. I need to be clear on what kind of procedures do we have. That's half of what you're paying for if you buy something.
So you would agree with that approach, build the business build your business so that as if you were to sell it in the future, right?
Have
Like,
the end in sight. I think that's a Stephen
okay.
Covey saying, but have the end in
Yeah,
sight.
the 7 habits. Yeah.
Yes, that one. And it's so true. And it's the same goes for how do you achieve a goal? Step one is to write it down. If you don't do it, you will not achieve it.
Yeah, and visualize it, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the same here. At the end of the day, what do you want to have created? What is the end game? And I know a lot of starting businesses don't want to think about what is the end game. But if you have the end game in mind, then defining what needs to happen in between is so much easier.
Yeah, I agree. Again, guys, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself, write it in the chat. Otherwise, I can keep all night. I have one more question, Jeffrey. It's about your personal experience, and I think this is something that a lot of people with corporate careers are kind of maybe thinking about. So I actually speak a lot with people that have a corporate job but they want to become entrepreneurs or owners of their own businesses and own their own income as well. So you mentioned that you moved to Vancouver, had to kind of work on your CPA designation, but in between that, were you were you like working for a company or not?
No, at the end of the day, I decided enough is enough
Okay.
in the corporate world. So I had a big change. COVID was one of those triggers from, okay, do I want to continue my life like this? And the answer was no. One of the things that I often see when people start talking about it from, okay, then I don't have nasty people surrounding me anymore. Stress will be less. And I can say that's not the case. Stress is still the same. It's different, but you're now in control. That's the different thing. Will you make less hours? Probably not. It will be more. So those are all the things. But what makes it work for me is that I'm now really building what I envision and nobody else. And that is the really satisfying part here. And I work with people that fit that picture where I can really help them add value. And that's the most satisfying part for me. Where in the corporate world, where does the satisfaction come from? Most of the time, I worked on a number of projects and I did them all over again. And sometimes they were not even implemented, right? So some people love those projects and the deadlines and enjoy the rush out of that. But for me, it shifted into how can I help people? And it's really satisfying to see that you get real results, move them forward, and make real profit going forward. And see the light bulbs go off when you're explaining margin and when you really change their estimates, and all of a sudden the money rolls in because they tweaked a few things. It's really satisfying, those kind of things. And that's why I'm doing this. One, because now I can manage my own agenda. It's worth a lot. And two, you get to work with people that are really close to my interests, and I help them forward. And that is really something that makes it worth it. So do I recommend leaving your corporate job? Well, if you're just looking for less hours and less stress, it's not going to happen. So, but if you're looking forward to really driving things forward and adding value to people, then I can say, yeah, it's worth investigating if it's doable for you, if your core skills could be turned into something commercial.
So Marcela says, what would you say was your biggest challenge in your path?
Time management still is. Where do you put your time? There's so many things to do if you have your own business. Spending it on the right things is always a challenge because all the things need to happen, but when? That's my biggest challenge. If you have a tip to do that better, I'm all ears.
I think we are all working on that, right?
Yes.
So one of my follow-up questions on corporate jobs and the transition to becoming a business owner. What is your, I don't know, suggestion, maybe not recommendation, maybe recommendation is too strong, but your suggestion for people going to transition from corporate world to owning their own businesses? Should that happen like slowly, maybe with a side hustle, maybe with some projects, whatever? Or should that say, okay, no, stop working and then, you have to commit full time? What's your kind of suggestion there?
If I look back, I wish I would have started it part-time, because that would have probably got me a better focus on where do we need to be, what is a successful effort, what not. Because if you do it like a big bang and you quit your job and you're not on the right track, and I've seen it with a few colleagues a couple of times, that can be very stressful. If there's no income for a couple of months because you're not doing the right things, that can be very stressful. So I would start it slowly, investigate what you really like, who you really like to work with, and do it like that. I've seen the most success with that approach rather than the big bang.
Right. All right. Any last questions, guys? Okay. Otherwise, I think this has been great. I have enjoyed this a lot. We share our perspectives a lot. I really like your approach. And yeah, it was great having you, Jeffrey. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Yeah. And
you'll see me back with the others, what the others have to say. Very curious about that.
Yeah, I will collect feedback and pass it on to you. But yeah, it was great. And again, thank you all for being here. One quick thing before you go, you know that we are running our Income First Fundamentals program starting June 22nd. We are doing it with a promotional price of $399 Canadian dollars. Regular pricing is $1,500. So if you want to, work on your offer, sales, channels, execution systems, feel free to check that out. I will make sure to send the details after the meeting along with the recording of today. So again, thank you very much and hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. It was
Thank you all.
amazing.
Yep. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you again.
See you guys. Bye-bye.